The rain came early to Dongdaemun that Tuesday. Yemi had learned, over 3 years of selling flowers from a repurposed cart on the corner of Jangcheongdaro, that rain was both enemy and opportunity. It drove away the casual buyers, the couple strolling, the office workers making impulsive after-hours gestures, but it occasionally sent the desperate ones her way. The men who'd forgotten anniversaries. The ones who'd said something unforgivable and needed a symbol of remorse before they walked through their front doors. She had flowers for those men, too. Tonight, however, the street was empty. Yemi pulled her thin jacket tighter and counted what remained in her cart beneath the plastic sheeting. 7 red roses, 2 bunches of carnations beginning to wilt at the edges, and 1 perfect white peony she'd been unable to sell all week because it was too expensive for a Tuesday and too lonely for a weekend. She'd already reduced it 3 times. She would have to throw it away in the morning. She was 19 years old, Ghanaian by birth, Korean by circumstance. Her mother had come here to work before Yemi was old enough to understand what work really cost, and she spoke Korean with a slight accent that some customers found charming and others used as an excuse to underpay her. She had learned to hold her ground. She had learned to smile with a precision that communicated exactly how much she would not be moved on price. The digital clock above the 7-Eleven across the street blinked 11:47 p.m. She was seriously considering packing up when the black car pulled over. It was the kind of car that did not belong on this street. Not illegally. There was no law against luxury vehicles on working-class corners, but aesthetically, cosmically wrong. The way a diamond earring looks wrong in a gas station bathroom. Long, matte black, windows tinted so darkly they seemed to swallow the orange glow of the street lamps. The door opened. The man who stepped out was perhaps 40, though something in his bearing made the number feel irrelevant. He was tall and lean in a dark charcoal suit that had not been bought in any shop Yemi had ever walked past. His face was angular, arranged in an expression of such perfect neutrality it seemed less like a resting expression and more like a discipline. A mask worn so long it had forgotten it was a mask. He walked toward her without hesitation, as if he had always meant to stop here. Yemi straightened. "What do you need?" she asked in Korean, her standard opening. "Not can I help you?" That gave people an easy out. "What do you need?" assumed the transaction was already happening. The man looked at her cart with the same expression he'd worn crossing the street. Not bored, not curious, but intensely, quietly attentive, as if the roses were information. "1 red," he said. His voice was low and unhurried, the kind of voice that had never needed to raise itself to be heard in any room. Yemi reached under the plastic and drew out the best of her 7 roses. She developed an eye for this. She could match any buyer to their corresponding flower in seconds. This man got the one with the straightest stem, the fullest bud, the most unblemished petals. She named the price. Standard. Fair. He reached into his jacket pocket and paused. She watched his brow shift by a fraction. Not alarm, but something adjacent to it. His hand came out empty. "I don't have cash," he said. There was no apology in the words. He stated it the way a person states a weather condition, simply, without shame, as if the inconvenience was the universe's problem, not his. Yemi looked at him, looked at the rose in her hand, looked at the rain, which had eased into a fine mist that turned every light source into a halo. She thought about her rent. She thought about the peony she'd throw away in the morning. She thought about the 4 roses she still needed to sell. Then she looked at him again. There were men who came to her cart at midnight, who smelled of soju and regret. There were men who haggled over 500 won while wearing watches that cost more than her mother's monthly wage. There were men who looked at her and saw a transaction. This man looked at her and saw. She couldn't quite name it. Not a transaction. Not a charity case. He saw her in the way that very few people ever bothered to. Fully, briefly, without assumption. "Take it," she said, and held the rose out. He didn't reach for it immediately. "I said I don't have." "I know." She placed it on the cart ledge closest to him. "It's raining. You needed 1 rose, and you came here. Take it." A silence opened between them. The mist settled on both their shoulders like something gentle and indiscriminate. The man looked at the rose for a long moment. Then he picked it up with a care that surprised her, not delicate exactly, but precise, as if he understood the exact force a rose required not to be damaged. He looked at her. "Your name?" he said. "Yemi." Something in his expression shifted, not a smile, Nothing as readable as that. But something. Yemi, he repeated, as if confirming the spelling of a word in a language he was beginning to learn. He reached into an interior pocket and produced a simple white business card. He placed it on the cart with the same precision he'd used for the rose. "If you ever need something," he said. Then he walked back to the matte black car and was gone. Yemi looked at the card. No name. No company. Just a phone number, embossed in clean black ink. She tucked it into her jacket pocket, sold 3 more roses to a drunk man singing ballads at 12:30 a.m., packed up her cart, and walked 40 minutes home because the last bus had already gone. She didn't throw away the white peony. She asked around, carefully, not aggressively. She described the car to Junsu, the middle-aged man who ran the Pojangmaka 3 streets over and knew everyone in the neighborhood the way a river knows the shape of the land it's carved through. Junsu went very still. Matte black. Long. No plates visible. "I didn't check for plates." "You didn't need to." He handed her a skewer of tteokbokki without her asking. The kind of generosity people offer when they're about to say something alarming. "That's Jang Siwon's car." The name meant nothing to her. She said so. Junsu looked at her the way adults look at children who've just walked barefoot through a garden without knowing about thorns. "He runs Chongmeek," Junsu said quietly. "You know what that is?" She didn't. He explained it in the careful, abbreviated way people explain things they'd rather not know in full detail themselves. Chongmeek was not a corporation, though it had corporations. Not a political organization, though it had politicians. It was the kind of structure that existed in the grammar of Korean power as a subject that most sentences were careful to avoid. "He owns 3 buildings on this street," Junsu said. "He's never been arrested. He's never been photographed in anything that ends up in a courtroom." He paused. People who make problems for Jang Siwon tend to become very small problems very quickly. Yemi ate her tteokbokki. "He bought a rose from me," she said. "Did he pay?" "He forgot his cash. I gave it to him free." Junsu stared at her. "He didn't do anything," she said, somewhat defensively. "He was just polite. He gave me his card." Junsu stared at the card she showed him with the expression of a man looking at an unexploded ordnance. "Throw that away," he said. "Why?" "Because nobody gets that card unless he wants them to have it. And nobody he wants to have it is in a situation you should want to be in." She didn't throw it away. 2 weeks later, her cart was stolen. Not metaphorically, literally taken. The entire thing, wheels and all, the remaining flowers and the small cash tin she kept wired beneath the frame. Gone between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. while she slept 4 blocks away. She filed a police report. The officer was polite in the way that communicated the report would be filed and nothing further would occur. She borrowed money from her mother. The conversation that accompanied it left both of them feeling like they'd failed each other in some way neither could name. 3 days later, a man came to her new corner, young, with the particular blankness of someone professionally committed to being unmemorable, and informed her that the corner of Jangcheongdaro had been claimed and that she would need to pay a weekly fee to continue selling there. She told him, in careful Korean, that she would not. He smiled and said she had a week to think about it. That night, she sat in her apartment staring at the ceiling with the white business card propped against the lamp on her nightstand like an unanswered question. She thought about what Junsu had said. She thought about the word smaller. She thought about the way Jang Siwon had said her name. Yemi. Not as if it were difficult, but as if it were worth the effort of saying correctly. She picked up her phone. Typed the number. Typed. "This is the flower seller. Someone is trying to take my corner." She stared at the message for 60 seconds. She sent it. 3 minutes. 5. She set the phone face down. The phone buzzed. 1 word, address. She typed her corner's address. 1 word back, handled. She never saw the young man again. No one came the following week, or the week after. She heard through Junsu, who heard through a network she'd never fully mapped, that the group had dissolved its presence in the neighborhood with unusual speed. "Like smoke?" Junsu said, with an expression she couldn't read. She didn't text the number again, but she kept the card. Mid-October. The air finally made honest by autumn. She was wrapping unsold stock when the black car returned. He crossed the street at the same unhurried pace, a different charcoal suit that was equally exact. "Yemi," he said. "You remembered." "I remember most things." She looked at him steadily. "You handle my situation." "Yes." "I don't know how to feel about that." He tilted his head, the most curiosity she'd seen him express. Why? Because I don't know what I accepted when I sent that message. She met his eyes directly. What does someone like you want in return for something like that? The mist was back, hazing the streetlights into impressionist smears. Jang Siwon was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone searching for words, but of someone deciding which true thing to say. Nothing, right now, he said. But I'd like to buy a rose. With cash, this time. He produced his wallet. Held out the exact price she charged. No rounding up, no performance of generosity. She looked at it. Looked at him. Took the money. She gave him the white peony. The one she'd stopped throwing away. The one she'd started keeping specifically without knowing why. His expression changed when he took it. Not much, but enough. White, he said. You look like a man who's been given too many red ones, she said. A pause. Then, finally, for the first time, a small and terrible and entirely genuine thing. He smiled. It lasted perhaps 2 seconds. It rearranged her understanding of his face completely. Same time next week, he said. She thought about what Junsu had said. She thought about thorns and gardens and the specific calculus of danger. She thought about the way some men looked at her and saw transactions, and this man looked at her and saw her. I'll be here, she said. I'm always here. He was there the following Tuesday. And the one after that. Part 5. What flowers know that people don't. Here is what Yemi understood about flowers that most of her customers didn't. A flower doesn't give itself. It doesn't make a choice. It simply becomes what it becomes, fully, without apology, and if someone happens to be present for that becoming. If someone pauses long enough in their trajectory across the world to notice, then something passes between them that has no official name in any language. She hadn't given him that first rose out of pity. She'd given it because something in the quality of his stillness in the rain had reminded her of the white peony, expensive and exact, and stubbornly present on a corner that should have moved on without it. She wasn't naive. She knew what Jang Siwon was. Over the weeks, she learned more, from Junsu, from the particular way people's voices changed when she mentioned she knew him. She understood the weight of what surrounded him. But she also knew this. He came to her corner alone. He paid full price. He listened when she talked, not with the performative attention of someone waiting for their turn to speak, but with the focused, unhurried attention of someone who had decided this conversation was worth their complete presence. He had never asked her for anything. He had told her once, on a cold November evening while she trimmed stems, I built something that functions on fear. Everything and everyone near me for 20 years has operated that way. You've never been afraid of me. I've been cautious, she corrected him. Not afraid. No. He looked at the flowers. I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything with it, she said. It's just true. Spring arrived early. Yemi had a new cart, larger, better made, that she'd bought herself from a good season and a loan she was nearly finished repaying. She had 3 wholesale accounts, a weekend market stall in Mapo, and a helper who came on Saturdays. She had a phone with a contact saved under a name she'd chosen herself, Tuesday. The first warm Tuesday, she set aside a bunch of freesia, small, yellow-white, barely fragrant unless you held them right under your nose, and waited. At 11:30 he came. Freesia, he said, looking at what she'd set aside. They mean trust, she told him, in the language of flowers. He was quiet. He looked at them the way he'd looked at the white peony, with that particular quality of attention that made her feel something was being carefully and permanently recorded. He reached for his wallet. They're not for sale, she said. They're yours. Already. He looked at her. She shrugged. Consider us even. He took the freesia. He stood with them for a moment. A man who commanded fear across half the city, standing at a flower cart on a Tuesday night, holding a bunch of small yellow-white flowers while the mist turned every street lamp soft. I'm not sure we'll ever be even, he said. Then keep coming back, she said. We'll get there. She was right. It took a while. But she was right.
If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, comment and subscribe for more stories.